Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of the RRAR interview series. Joining me today is Dennis Jernigan, Deputy Chief Engineer of the North Carolina Turnpike Authority. So, Dennis, thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate your time and for you appearing on our interview series.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to sharing conversation with you.
Of course. So let's get right into it. Looking at the influx of people moving into Raleigh, and in North Carolina in general, what should the main focus be to accommodate all of the new residents and also keeping the same quality of life that people expect in our area?
That is really difficult to narrow the focus to one thing. The infrastructure needs in this area are changing at the same time our population is growing. North Carolina is, after all, a very attractive place to live and work. The U.S. Census data for 2023 shows that our population increase was third only behind Texas and Florida with 140,000 new residents. And NCDOT a couple of years ago did a study called NC Moves 2050. And what that study showed was that by the year 2050, North Carolina's population is going to grow by 40% or 4 million people. And even though that generates additional revenue from vehicle sales and fuel taxes, what the study showed is we're still going to need about 3.5 times the anticipated revenue to keep pace with the needs for our infrastructure needs. So transportation planners and leaders have to find a balance. They have to find a way to continue to meet the need. We also have to be open to different and creative funding sources. Traditional funding is just not going to keep pace with our needs. And it's compounded with the loss of fuel tax revenue due to EVs and hybrids, which are taking a larger share of the market. We need to look at accommodating all modes of transportation. Not everybody likes to drive. I'm a commuter. I live in Johnston County, and so I drive 30-ish miles one way into Wake County every day. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people are trying to get out of that. A lot of people like to bike. They like to walk, multi-use paths and greenways. And then we've got connected and autonomous vehicles. So how's that going to impact the network? Because they're going to have different needs than what a vehicle with a driver has. They're also typically heavier, which is going to cause our infrastructure to wear out a little faster. But if I had to pick a main focus, it would probably be that we need to pull from all available resources. There's a lot of grant funding coming out. There is a locally administered projects program, which really more so addresses those multimodal needs I was just talking about. And so I would say we need to improve and maintain our infrastructure while balancing those available resources and maximize the effectiveness for our region and our state.
So I'm glad you mentioned sort of where we stand as a state, behind Florida and Texas in terms of population growth, and I think my next question sort of is in line with that in terms of transportation. And you talked about a bunch of different options there, but what are some projects that are being worked on that you believe will bring in everlasting and impactful change to the Raleigh area so that those new people coming in and those people that aren't so much a fan of commuting, how does that work for them?
So as far as an impactful project, before I came to the Turnpike Authority almost 8 years ago, I worked on 6 sections of I-540. They were on the eastern side, somewhat on the northern side, and then on a little bit on the western side of Raleigh. And so 440, the Raleigh Beltline, used to serve a lot of Raleigh's needs. But with more and more people moving here, where they lived, it moved out. And so the 440 became really an inner beltline. It was because it was so inner to where the outer limits of Raleigh was because Raleigh had grown so much. And so 540 really provides a good travel alternative on the outer edges of the city without somebody having to come most of the way into Raleigh to get around. It's an improved travel time on 540. There's 6 lanes, it's 70 miles an hour. And just look at the usage. It's heavily traveled, especially during peak. And so really there's lots of travel benefits for 3/4, I'll call it 3/4 of the Raleigh circumference. The 540 outer loop, once it's finished, is going to be about 69 miles as far as the total length of that. So as far as impactful projects right now, I would say the 5 sections of total NC 540 that we are working on now are going to have a significant impact for this region. I mentioned 440, and it serves a lot of traffic on the north side of Raleigh, but on the south side of Raleigh, really it's I-40 that is the de facto southern leg of the Beltline.
Mhm.
And so in addition to having the 440 traffic that comes into that area for those sections from the west side of Raleigh and the east side of Raleigh, you've got that I-40 traffic that's coming from the east that sort of magnifies the impact of adding to the traffic there on that section of roadway. Got a lot of closely spaced interchanges. It's a really urban environment, heavy peak traffic. And so if you look at what we're building, just the two sections that we're working on now of 540, it coupled with the existing Triangle Expressway, we're going to have 23 different interchanges that will give you access to a 6-lane, 70 miles an hour facility.
Wow.
A lot of travel time savings, more reliable traffic time. And
Right.
one of the collateral benefits as well is we're pulling traffic off local roads.
Mhm.
Before the pandemic, our heaviest spot was we were exceeding 60,000 vehicles a day. And that is 60,000 vehicles that would have been on US 1, US 64, NC 55, roads that are already overloaded. And so by building the section that we're building now, we're doing something that you don't get an opportunity to do much in this world these days, and that is we're giving people time back in their lives.
Yeah.
So we can't extend your life, but the time that you're here, we can give you time. Instead of sitting in a vehicle somewhere, you're spending it doing the things you love.
All right, I'm glad you mentioned the 540 project. That's actually where my next question was going to go, but I think you covered a lot of it. So I want to expand a little bit on that and get your opinion on this. So I think you just made a great point, talking about um, the cutting down on traffic, the cutting down on your commute time. But I think that's what we always think of when we see a project like 540 underway. It's going to help commute, but is it also in the mind of the developers when something like that is going on it's going to also increase accessibility to amenities and maybe even improve the quality of life for North Carolinians. So that's another sort of feather in the cap of ways to bring people to our area. Is that something that's considered?
Absolutely. So one of the benefits of 540 is an obvious reason or an obvious benefit, and that is if you are traveling from points south and east of Raleigh to points west of Raleigh, you will be able to, for all intents and purposes, completely bypass the inner Raleigh area where it's heavily congested and just go about your way either from west to east or east to west. If you live in the area, you're visiting in the area, you want to get to the airport or you want to go see a Salamanders game or something like that, you can, and let's say you live in the area, you live in Fuquay or Holly Springs or Garner, we're going to have 23 interchanges along that corridor that will give people access to the benefit of the facility. And those interchanges are strategically located. We work with local governments to determine where those interchanges should be. It's their gateways. Some are obvious, US 401, NC 50, US 70 business on the new section, but we work with local governments to see where they wanted to put them on a Bells Lake Road or Holly Springs Road. So their gateways, their busier thoroughfares are accommodated as well. We also work with those municipalities to accommodate their future infrastructure plans. You'll see on the facility where in some places, if you're traveling on Lake Wheeler Road or East William Street, and it may look to a commuter that the bridge is twice as long as it needs to be. Well, that's because we know that they have a plan to make that facility wider. So as opposed to us building a regular length bridge, if you will, we went ahead and built that longer bridge and purchased a little extra right of way so that we didn't have to come back and rebuild something that was fairly new. So it makes future dollars stretch farther. But I mentioned the cities and towns, the Garner, the Fuquay, Apex Cary, a lot easier to get access between those facilities. I mentioned the time savings earlier. You know, one of the things that nobody likes to do is I'm going to some location and I've got to figure out how to account for traffic. Right. And so if I say I'm probably going to lose 30 minutes for traffic, I put that in my schedule. I get there, traffic was wonderful that day. I'm not impacted. Then I'm sitting there where I'm going for 30 minutes wondering what to do and all that time that I wasted. If I go the other way and say it's normally a 10-minute drive and I leave 10 minutes with 10 minutes to go, and then I've got 30 minutes of traffic impact, well, now I'm late. And so one of the things 540 affords is a more reliable travel time. I also mentioned earlier the multimodal accommodations. As I said earlier, a lot of people now are looking for bike ped accommodations. And that is something that makes it attractive if they're available, if people are looking to move here. And
Definitely.
on a controlled access facility like 540, just on the 5 sections we're building now, we have 35 locations where bicycles, pedestrian accommodations are either being built as part of the project, or they're being accommodated so that a municipality can come in and very easily make those connections later.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll mention in regards to this question is a lot of Wake County is really developed out, especially on the west side. And a lot of the undeveloped area that remains is on the east side of Raleigh. So out in the Knightdale, Wendell area.
Sure.
And so one of the benefits to the phase 2 portion, the section that we're kicking off now, we're in the design phase, and we'll start construction around the May timeframe of this year, is we're accommodating that planned growth. If you look at where the building permits, the development plans are being submitted in Wake County, a fair percentage of those, really higher than overall, is in that area. And so by us getting there and building this facility, which we're planning to open in 2028, the last piece, by building that facility now, once those development plans come to fruition, we've already got the infrastructure there to support that development, that growth.
So I think that's great. And I think it's important to look to the future in terms of everything that you're laying out. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about a project that you've seen come to fruition that you believe is already making a tremendous impact. And maybe it's something we use every day and we're just not aware of how great of an advancement that is. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to maybe talk a little bit about that.
I appreciate that. I tell you, I've been in construction for highway projects for 33 years now, and I estimate that I've worked on somewhere between 400 and 500 projects. And so narrowing down to one is quite difficult, but I'll mention a couple. The Fortify project was a major project in this area. It was a significant rehabilitation. There was a chemical reaction in that pavement. It was very important that we get it out. And so in addition to improving travel for motorists and building that project in a way that was as least impactful as we could be, one of the things we also picked up from that project was the outreach. We started communicating with the public about 2 years before we started the project. We went to chambers of commerce, we went to businesses, individual businesses, anybody who would listen, to let them know that we had something coming that was going to be big. And we really learned how impactful that was because people listened. If you looked at the commute before we started that project, it was somewhat like this, and people came in later, they left, they came in earlier, and the commute actually flattened at this point and stretched out at this point. And so it helped them and it helped us. So we learned a lot about how we can help each other with the public and a transportation agency when we're building projects. The I-40 widening project between Wade Avenue and US 1 and 64 was a bottleneck every day. And so very impactful for this area. The 64 Knightdale bypass, that was routinely consistently really one of the most congested regions, facilities in this region. You always knew it was going to be congested and you just had to plan around it, and every surrounding road pretty much got plugged up. Another big one now is the I-40 widening from Johnston County up to the Beltline split. That's not even finished, and the westbound lanes have been opened from I-42 up to the split. And as a commuter from Johnston County, I'm enjoying that every day because we have all those additional lanes, and I'm looking forward to the rest of that one being open. But 540, I would say, is one that is really sort of, I would call it the marquee.
Yeah.
And starting with how things changed in the Triangle Expressway area 10 years ago, well, now about 12 years ago when it opened, the impact it made over there. I mentioned earlier, 60,000 vehicles a day were using that facility, pulling those off local roads and giving drivers a better choice, another choice, another travel alternative, if you will. And then one of the reasons I like what we're doing on 540, it's not just about motorists. It is, and that's one of our primary focus, but we're doing it with environmental sensitivity. We started off prior to the project with a water quality monitoring project that we did in conjunction with NC State. we went back before we put the section that's underway now under contract, those 3 projects. We went back and did a post-construction assessment on the existing section of Triangle Expressway to find out how sensitive are we being to the environment. Are our wetlands sustaining? Are our streams surviving? So nobody had ever done that. That was the first. Turnpike did it. And we used those lessons learned to improve the contracts that are underway now. And we're incorporating that on all our projects now. Reforestation. We've worked with Wake County, recently added 1,600 trees to one of our interchanges on the existing Triangle Expressway. One of our marquee interchanges on the phase 1 section that's underway now, and phase 1 extends from NC 55 in the Apex Holly Springs area over to I-40. Huge interchange there. It's going to take up 481 acres when we open this year. And then when we open phase 2, it actually swells out to 630 acres. It's a lot of space. So we're looking at a couple of different things there. We're looking at potentially putting a solar array so we can put power back in the grid. If that's not feasible, we're looking at reforestation, possibly a combination of the 2. And we also have a lot of landscaping along the corridor. And so we're looking at how we can plant that benefits pollinators.
Yep.
We all know that pollinator population is in decline and we need them for food. And so we're looking for ways to enhance that as well. And then finally, another impact is with the people that live along the corridor. They are our neighbors. For as long as that project is there, that facility is there, they're our neighbors. So if we can do things to make the construction less impactful, an example, we had a neighborhood that we were going to put a power line behind their neighborhood, but there were no houses across the street. They asked, why not move the power line to the other side of the road? It made all the sense in the world. We worked with Duke, moved the power line. They were happy. And it was a win-win. It could go either way. So why not lessen the impact? And so we try and be impactful in more ways than just people who are riding in vehicles.
Yeah, well, thank you for covering all that. I think that's super important for everyone to hear. I mean, I moved here from New York in 2018, and just in those 6 years, I have seen just tremendous expansion and development. So I totally understand what you're saying there, and I think it's great to continue to see that type of progress. So, my final question for you today. Obviously, I think we have seen more recently the use of technology and how improved it's been and how it creates more efficiency and convenience in a lot of ways. How is your organization, the North Carolina Turnpike Authority, using technology to improve safety and efficiency in regard to transportation?
I'm really glad you asked that question. Thank you so much. Because we are not an agency that focuses on, we're just going to build a road, collect tolls, and then go on to the next and build another road, which I will say, a toll road comes about because local leaders look to see the level of revenue they have, the level of need they have, and they can't fill the gap. And they asked us to evaluate that. So that's how a toll road actually comes about. But once we're in place, we have a lot of infrastructure that other roads, other DOT roads don't necessarily have. We have fiber, we have power, we have cameras, we have traffic control devices, and DOT has that too on their roads, but we typically have more just because of the expectation for customer service. So one of the first ways is all electronic tolling. I grew up when I used to travel to the north, you go through the toll booths, and as a kid, it was a novelty to throw the change in the basket. But you had to slow down, you had to stop to do that. And one of the biggest hazards when you've got a high-speed, high-volume facility is speed differential. So you've got a 70-mile-an-hour facility, and if you had to slow down to 0 and somebody's not paying attention or they lose control, that's when severe accidents happen. So all electronic tolling, Triangle Expressway was the first facility in the nation to be designed as an all-electronic toll facility. We weren't the first to have it. We were the first to design it from inception. We were committing that's the way it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
We have new overhead traffic counters, so it's an improved toll collection technology. It's going to make it more efficient and it's less destructive to the pavement. There are 3 different tolling transponder types in the country. Up until 2016, no agency could read more than 2. North Carolina Turnpike Authority worked with the industry that develops those transponders and became the first entity in the nation to be able to read all three. We call it tri-protocol.
Wow.
So that was something that when we went out to the industry with it, the technology didn't exist. Now it does exist, and it's widely used. Connected and autonomous vehicles. In 2016, the US DOT decided to have autonomous vehicle proving grounds. They were going to select 10 entities across the nation where connected and autonomous vehicles could be tested and proven, to prove the technology. We submitted January 2017. We were selected as one of those entities. And we were an AVPG, an autonomous vehicle proving ground, for about 2 years until the vehicle manufacturers decided that they wanted to test wherever they wanted to test, and they didn't want US DOT or anybody else telling them where to test. And so that was rescinded. But in that time, we worked with Volvo, we worked with GM to help them develop their technology. We do have some I'll call it low tech things that we do. Pavement striping. We have done some piloting, some testing on that to try and figure out ways to improve the durability of pavement markings to prevent it from getting destroyed by snowplows. And so we are sharing those results with NCDOT as well as other states. We have a maintenance program that we incorporate GIS. So it makes us quicker. If one of our employees or one of our staff is on the facility and they see something that needs to be repaired, they can pull over on the shoulder, put it into a cell phone or an iPad, and it immediately goes to the person who needs to repair it. And that makes us quicker and more efficient. And then finally, one of our big things is wrong-way drivers. This is something we're very passionate about. Wrong-way driving incidents don't make up a significant impact of vehicular incidents, but when they do happen, the results are fairly catastrophic. Imagine two vehicles traveling 70 miles an hour in opposite directions and they hit. It's like hitting a wall at 150 miles an hour. So there's usually some very severe injuries. So we have used that fiber I mentioned earlier, that power supplies, and we incorporated some different technologies on the Triangle Expressway to try and figure out what works best. So we've run those for a couple of years, and now we actually have an advertisement on the street that later this year, we're going to start installing some of those technologies, both on the Monroe Expressway and on Triangle Expressway, with the intent to continue to incorporate those into our future facilities as well. Awesome. So using the technology capabilities and advantages that we have to try and not only improve the motorist experience, but make it safer as well.
I think that's all great stuff. And I think it just goes to show a lot of the things that maybe us everyday citizens don't notice is going on around us and how big of an advantage and how big of a benefit it can be to us. So I appreciate you laying all that out there. Dennis, I just want to say thank you again for joining us. I know our membership will love to hear this conversation. They'll be interested to know everything that's going on with the NC Turnpike Authority. And we look forward to more collaboration here in the near future. So again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.